Welcome to the Intelligence Amplifiers, podcast that celebrates the people who make the intelligence a collective superpower. In every episode, we uncover the stories of learning and development leaders who amplify knowledge, break down silos, and empower teams to thrive. These are the enablers of insight, the ones turning expertise into action and shaping the future of work by ensuring that the right knowledge reaches the right people at the right time. So, if you're ready to explore how the intelligence is amplified and shared across organizations, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Intelligence Amplifiers. Today we have Pola Papadopoulou joining us. Welcome, Pola. How are you?
Marco, it's a great pleasure to be here. I'm doing well. It's nice. It's getting a bit colder, I would say, or maybe we get a light breeze here in Greece. So yeah, I'm doing well now.
Nice. Yeah, and it's morning here in California, and we're having Indian summer, so it's getting hotter. So we're getting some of your heat
Yeah,
and
exactly. I think it's
sunlight.
coming.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you and I met through Spotify, and I remember we've had a couple of people from Spotify. I love all the work there, and we'll talk about that as well. But I wanted to kind of go back to how you got into learning and development, and I believe it had to do with teaching English, right?
Actually, yes, that's right. So my first work experience out of university, because I studied English language and literature, and then studying in Greece and growing up in Greece, I kind of had this fixed future, let's say, that I'm going to be an English teacher, because I didn't really know what else there was that I could do with a degree, and so I started teaching, private lessons. I started with kids, then I figured out maybe that's not my audience. Then I moved on to teenagers. Again, I was like, yeah, maybe not. I tried schools, summer camps, and then at some point I actually reached a point when I was like, maybe I ought to try adults, which I did. And that's how I got into business English. But then I felt there must be something more other than, just preparing the lesson and teaching the language. So I started going a bit more into, apart from teaching the grammar, let's say, or vocabulary, how can you teach the more diplomatic skills? Like how do you interrupt in a meeting, for example? Or how do you perform a performance review, with your direct reports? So there were a lot of pieces, and I started thinking, how can I put this into a curriculum? And so I started doing that, like preparing a course that I would actually go ahead and teach. And then I felt, there's something more here.
Got it. So it's not just about teaching English, but it's also almost like mindset and how to like show up in meetings and how to be strategic about conversations and so forth. And I wanted to go. You mentioned you studied. You actually you did a master's, I believe, in education, right? And
Yep.
it had to do with doing a thesis on Rwanda, if I'm correct.
Exactly. So the first master's that I
Uh-huh.
did was actually in international and comparative education. And that was more about how educational systems work. You had to figure out the educational resources in different places around the world. And so I just opted for Rwanda. I didn't actually end up going there. But at the moment, it's like, this is fascinating. And I could see, the different numbers of how many students actually go to primary schools, what are the resources that are needed, what does the government need to do in order to support all the kids that need to go to school, and of course teacher education, because this is like, teachers are at the forefront of all learning that happens in schools and everything. So I wanted to see what kinds of resources are needed for this type of learning.
I just find it fascinating, like studying, we talk about like building educational systems in corporations, right, in companies and so forth. And you studied an entire nation, right? So I would imagine that there's some similarities or some, you can observe some patterns, like what does it take to run education at the national level, and then what does it take to run it at the corporate level. So that I thought that was kind of fascinating to notice. So yeah. And then, so you studied this. So you then you ended up going to Stockholm, right? Like from Greece, and I believe Did you meet Spotify right away, or do something else before?
Oh, I actually, so I went to Stockholm to do my master's,
Uh-huh.
and then after, some trials and tribulations into what do I like doing, I ended up teaching with EF, with English first, and this is where I got into the world of business English. And after that, it was actually through networking, because I don't want to say nagging because that doesn't put a nice color in me. But, I started talking more to the academic manager there that I would really like to focus on something else as well. And it was through her network that I learned about a position as the education program coordinator at Spotify. So I interviewed, and this is when I got in. And I actually started learning more about learning and development. And I was amazed. I'm like, this is what I was looking for. This is it. This right here.
Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, I'm a huge fan, first of all, of EF. My kids went through that. I think they went to Rome or Spain or something like that. So it's a fantastic program. So thank you for being behind the scenes on that. So I love that. And then you mentioned Spotify, and yeah. So I think we had Maya on this podcast as well, right? So we've had an episode with her. A huge fan as well of both her and Spotify and what you guys are doing. And so you went from this sort of like um, exploring education at the national level to running education first program and English and business English, and then getting into a tech company that has pretty mature educational program. And not only that, but you focused on engineers, right? Like, I believe it was engineering onboarding that was the first sort of job to do, right?
Yes, exactly. That's right. It was actually, I considered it, my baby, because when I got in, it was at a stage, of course, that was working, and that was pre-COVID as well, because I
Hmm.
joined around June 2019. So then I managed to stay for a few months before we needed to turn everything online. So that was a challenge, but everything happens like in corporate environments. You just do sometimes, when the circumstances are a certain way, you just need to perform. You need to make this change. You need to adapt. And I saw that in all cases, not just, with COVID and having to move everything online. Um, so engineering onboarding for me was, I don't know, it's like it opened my eyes to corporate training. I would say I had to do with all of the behind the scenes. So I also belonged in a working group, when you take feedback from the newly hired engineers and you take it back to the engineers that are your subject matter experts. And then you fix bugs, you fix the whole experience. I had to make sure that everything was in place, like, oh, you're the first person you see, they told me. So I was like, okay, I need to make a good impression. So everything needed to be in order because, the learning experience for me is the content, but it's also how you present the content, how you
Hmm.
deliver the content, not just design wise, but is it organized? Does it go out the minute that someone needs it? Or do you just dump information on them and just hope for the best? So I think my job entailed a lot of that information, just making sure everyone knew where they needed to be, what they needed to do. And of course I was there for any
Hmm.
issues that popped up. That was my first taste, I would say.
Yeah, it's super interesting what you just said. It's not just the content, but it's how you deliver it. Like there's a message in the delivery itself that is hugely important, and sometimes like no, we don't pay enough attention to that. And I just want to kind of underline something you also mentioned or highlighted the COVID, sort of the onset of COVID. And I remember we hosted a number of companies through Technocon telling their story. And it was basically within weeks, companies shifted from doing delivery one way, which is in person, to doing it online. And it kind of always blows my mind how rapidly that happened, how quickly we adapted. And I just want to kind of highlight, the kudos to you for like stepping in and like, being able to do that and doing it with such a way that it's still something that's very, very important to like the being organized and delivering it the right way, and being that the first initial phase that the engineers or new hires interact with and so forth. So incredible, heroic job. Yeah.
Thank you. Because you also needed to keep apart from, because you didn't have time, to do the needs analysis, or like the gaps. Where are the gaps? How do we transfer this, to like from face to face to online? And we also needed, but we knew that we needed to take into consideration time zones, of course, times of hire. We needed to consider all of the assets. How would we
Mhm.
move these online? And unless I did it, I could not understand the work that actually goes behind this shift. So actually kudos to everyone that had to go through that, because it was just a major change that needed to happen like this.
It had to happen like this, and it wasn't just for a handful of engineers. I believe you guys were scaling quite rapidly back then. It was like what, hundreds of engineers per month or something. It was pretty big scale as well.
Exactly. Yeah, it was about 80 to 100, if I remember correctly. So it was, oh my God, there's a there's an intake of people. How do we get them started? So yeah, but it was really interesting.
Got it. What is some of the, if you're gonna look back, I know Spotify was some time ago, but looking back, like what's some of the most memorable learning experiences for you?
That's a very interesting question. Um, I think I got to see how you can work with learning, but like learning as a collaborative activity, I would say, because, up until that time, I had to work alone. So I was the one responsible for reporting on the learner's progress, for facilitating the lessons, for creating the content of the lesson. So everything. And then I think when I went into Spotify was the first corporate environment that I went, like the first tech giant, let's say. So I was amazed at how people wanted to collaborate with me, how people were so quick to give me their lights and their knowledge, and, help me turn that knowledge into a great, let's say, onboarding experience or a great course, or, they just shared. People just shared. And to
Hmm.
me, I just went from working solo to actually working with people and, like enjoying the experience. I could ask questions. So I think that was the first taste that I got of collaborative learning, and how this could work.
Yeah, and that's something that I was really amazed at, specifically Spotify. So I remember at the time where I was building Twitter University, and we kind of came up with a similar concept. We called it peer learning, and in parallel, Spotify was doing the same thing, not knowingly. Like we didn't really collaborate, but they were calling it collaborative learning, and it was really cool to kind of compare notes. And I remember I was really impressed by the culture there. So cultural collaboration, and the purpose of that was, I believe, sparking that innovation, right? Like having ideas collide and see what happens. And so yeah, you're lucky to kind of enter a company with such a strong culture. Yeah.
I was, considering that it was also my first, contact with the field.
Mhm.
I consider myself very, very lucky. And it was not just the collaborative learning to pull together a course, let's say, but it was also collaborative learning in the form. It could be like a lunch and learn. It could be a Q&A session. So everyone wanted to learn from everyone in different modes of, delivery. So It could be informal, it could be formal, it could be in a classroom, it could be a 1 hour meeting online. So to me, that was amazing. I was like, oh, we have a lunch and learn. What is this? And who does that? And how do you decide? But apparently, sometimes it's just as easy as people asking a question in a Slack channel. And then this turns into a learning experience one way or
Yeah.
another.
Yeah, that is the essence of that collaborative learning. It's like recognizing that it's not just top down from a handful of L&D people, but it's like the smartest people are right in the building, and like you just need to enable them to stand up and share themselves. And you guys did an amazing job with that, and you're behind the scenes on that. So super awesome. Thank you for kind of pioneering the approach. So yeah, very cool. And so after Spotify, you went back to university, I believe.
Yes, I did go back to university because I thought, let me try this because I hadn't, I don't know, but I think all this learning actually made me nostalgic of when I was a learner at the university. So then I did start studying myself. So it was around the same time that I started doing my second master's.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also was in a university environment where I had to work as a program manager with students. Um, and this was more around enabling them to do the best they can around their own learning. Because, programs at universities do not have the same flexibility that you can find in corporate environments. They're not as agile as products, for example, because usually in corporate or tech environments, you see learning as a product. It might work this way if you have, for example, uh, an agile methodology. You work in sprints. You have your minimum viable product. In this case, your minimum viable learning experience that goes out, and then you just iterate on that. But universities do not work like that because also of you have to have this many credits. You need to do this internship. You need to take this certificate. So to me, it was just wow. A complete change of pace and a complete change of context, actually.
I love how you do one master's and then you have experience in the real world, and then you go back and you do another master's, and like you kind of explore that from academic point of view and get to step back from the sort of commercial world and kind of learn it. And so now you're back in the industry, right? And you're at
Yes.
Inriver, right? So tell us a little bit more. What got you to join a tech company again, and this time a little smaller one?
So actually having tried both, I have
Uh-huh.
worked in both places. So I had the tech company experience, I had the university experience, and I decided, yes, I need to go back to tech. And I also wanted to be more in touch with the L&D. So I wanted to be more in the learning development, but as a learning partner, if that makes sense, just not just as a content creator necessarily, but I wanted to be able to understand the business, the goals, you know. So I thought, oh, okay, I need to go back to tech, and so I had this amazing opportunity, and it was a very it happened so fast and I was so happy to just join. It's been almost 2.5 years that I've been with Inriver. And I also liked because Inriver is a product information management company. So this is
Mm-hmm.
the software. And I liked the whole organization. So I think a little bit of the geek in me kicked in. I'm like, oh, this is organized. So I love this software idea. Um, and it's been actually, I think I made the right decision there, going back
Got
to
it.
tech.
And you mentioned like what really kind of called you was this learning as a strategy and also applying learning design. So what does that look like? Like how do you how do you use learning as a strategy, and how do you go about like then designing solutions around that, and also kind of closing the loop and kind of evaluating, all right, like, well, I thought this strategy is going to work, we're going to move this needle, and then observing if that needle got moved or not, and like kind of kind of iterating on that. I'm curious how that manifests.
Of course. So I think one of the things that I learned and especially was able to practice at my current job is to always start with why. Because I can tell you before, I didn't really do that. I mean, when I was teaching, I would always ask my students, why do you need to learn English? Like, what it is that you want to get out of it? And this is where I could see that, oh no, you don't actually need to learn the language because you speak perfectly. It's just that you need to learn how to use the language. And so what I see here, because of the flexibility that we have in designing programs, we start as a strategy is more like, let's not just do a course and throw a course as a solution there, but let's actually start with a why. So why do we need this? What is the problem? What is it that we're trying to solve? And to me, this is actually part of a learning strategy, or rather learning as a strategy. Um, because I think it allows us to talk to people, because our training is also external facing in this case. So, we have our customers that use the software, we have our partners. And so in this case, we need to have that kind of insight and needs assessment, if you like, that we really need to focus on and then go from there. So the way I would go, like after I have this, like, okay, this is your problem. Do we need a course? Do we need a job aid? Do we need just a video? But let's say that, for example, we decide, oh, yes, we do need a course in this case. Then I would just go to, okay, what does the user, the learner, need to be able to do? And this is, I think, it's one of the challenges sometimes when you work with other people that design a product, for example. They need to be put in the place of the learner. And so I feel like this is, as a learning designer, as a learning partner, I need to be able to, you know, have them between the lines, if you like, of, okay, you're walking here now, don't take a different road. We need to stay here because this is going out to the users. It's not going out to other product managers, for example, within the company. And then from there, we actually go to like backwards design. Okay, so we know what they need to do. How do we know that they will have actually learned that by the end of the course? And this is where assessment comes in, where it's not just multiple choice, but you actually need to have a relevant learning experience, a case study, if you like, something that feels relevant to them, which actually goes back to collaborating with SMEs or customer success managers or partner managers in order to get that case, because they're at the front line of talking to customers and partners. So it's kind of like a loop that you go through.
Got it. Got it. So start with the why, and then iterate from there on. And I'm curious. So that's the strategy piece. I'm curious about the design, and maybe a little bit more specifically production, right? So coming back from coming from Spotify, where you did internal engineering, collaborative learning, which is probably perfection is the enemy of good enough, is probably, like, I think the motto that you had. Like, so it was about like rapid, quick, good enough content that's up to date, in just in time, but not necessarily polished. Like, nobody cared about beautiful slides, probably, etc. And now you're in the world of, like, this is not just internal, but it's actually external facing. So I would imagine, I'm just guessing, that the polish and the production quality and all that is probably more important than like that sort of like quick and dirty, just in time, let's ship it and iterate from there. So how does that compare, those two different worlds, I guess?
That is an amazing question, actually, because I found that you need to focus on both, which is kind of, you need to learn how to do video editing. You need to learn how to use Photoshop or Canva or all of the. I had to use Figma at some point, which I was not familiar before I came into this job. But you need to find a way to balance how you use those. And the thing that is really important in this case is that you need to have a good authoring tool and a good learning experience platform that actually helps you with this creation, because you cannot do it all. You only have 8 hours in a day. And so in order to focus both on the content, but also to make it visually appealing and to reduce, like distractions and like flashy colors, because even though you produce e-learning that goes out externally, it doesn't mean that you have to go overboard with the design. Sometimes simpler is better. Um, and so I'm trying to go by this. So how can I lay out the information in the authoring tool to make the most sense? I think this is where I'm focusing. But I can tell you I had to do a lot of upskilling, with video editing especially. But it's a combination in this case. You still have
Hmm.
to figure out, okay, this is the information and this is how it's going to go out.
Got it, got it. And so, speaking of, tools and technology and all that, what do you see the puck going? Like, what's exciting? What do you see out there in the world, that is, likely to happen?
In terms of using tools and platforms and
Tools or learning and development in general. Like, where's the puck going? Or like, how's our industry shifting?
me, I mean, AI is everywhere. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's just the elephant in the room, but you have to talk about it. Um, but I see more and more platforms and authoring tools are actually starting to use AI for personalization. So that's one thing, you personalize learning pathways based on the role of a learner. You can recommend courses, articles, anything. So you have a centralized content hub, if you like. And some platforms actually have that, where you can pull in information from different sources in the web. And then, okay, this person says, I'm interested in sales. You type in sales and then you just have recommendations. So to me, it's a lot about having AI as a code designer, if you like. So co-designing, you get an outline for your learning course or training, you get ideas, you get, it just helps you so that you minimize the work that you do in putting the structure together, and instead you focus on actually being a strategist, being a partner, um, instead of just, an order taker and, just a content creation machine. So I would say this is where I see it going. And of course, there might be more features with AI, for example, when it comes to reporting within a platform. So it might be that you just ask it a question. Uh, how many people have completed this training, for example, and you just get it, and a manager can go in and do that. So the learning designer doesn't have to gatekeep in this sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, who
Got it.
completed.
A- and so, okay, so basically AI is providing you insights, so something that it was maybe data collection and sort of, a toil work in the past. Now it's like automated, and AI is helping you kind of pull the right content and create a solution to that, those insights. And now your job is kind of elevated to focus more on a strategy and like, how do I make the strongest business impacts. It's really a tool that's kind of like you kind of building a mountain underneath you, sort of making yourself more. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's also because I feel like AI cannot empathize, at least not yet. I don't know how it's going to develop. But to me, you can use it, and it sounds controversial, but you can use it to create more human-centered experiences, because it gets the more admin things out of the way, let's say, the
Mm-hmm.
tasks that you could really just automate, or you could do 10 times faster, so that you can
Mm-hmm.
focus on what the actual needs of your learners are, how they can learn best. So you have time to actually talk to them and listen to them, because you actually need that in order to create efficient and effective learning.
Got it. So what I'm hearing is like you as a strategist, like more like you're positioning yourself more as like a learning strategist, and kind of applying, like partnering with the business and solving for the actual business needs through learning, and then leveraging AI as a tool essentially to be more productive in that approach. Yeah. Cool. So looking, so I find you have a very colorful career, right? Like you started with like masters in educational systems, right? In Rwanda, and then you had this amazing experience at Spotify, building and scaling engineering onboarding, and going from like in person to online to international to like I mean, it's like everything was thrown into the mix, right? And you did that well. And then you got a second master's in program management, and now you're like doing this learning strategy for a company that's rapidly scaling software company. So looking back at like that career, what would be something you would give as a piece of advice to a younger self?
To me, it is do it scared. Just do it scared, because to like half of the things and more of what I've done was at a point where I just doubted myself, where I saw an opportunity. It's like when you see a job on LinkedIn, for example, and then you're like, nah, there's no way they'll take me even for an interview. But still, you get outside of your comfort zone, and you just go, you just apply. Sometimes you might embarrass yourself, and this is totally fine. But to me, if you're scared and if you feel uncomfortable, it's a great indication that yes, this is where you should go.
Got it. So courage again. So do it scared. I love that. Awesome. That's such a great advice. Well, Paula, so lovely to have you here, and thank you for sharing your story. I'm excited to see what's next for you. And I know that you had to overcome just being here. It was also a little bit of a do it scared. So hopefully it was all comfortable, and great to have you on the episode.
It's amazing. Thank you so much. I'm truly honored. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. That's it for this episode of the Intelligence Amplifiers. If you like what you've heard, be sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss out on the future episodes. And if you're interested in being a guest or have a question, check out the episode description for how to reach us. Also, don't forget to check out Plus Plus, the platform that makes collective intelligence at scale possible. Find out more at plusplus.co. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep amplifying.